on, let me just get set up. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
I saw Letterkenny Live last night in San Jose, and they had a lot of very deep cut Sharks jokes, which, considering they're a bunch of guys from Canada, I thought was real fucking impressive.
I mean, have you met hardcore like Canadian hockey fans?
I-
They follow everything.
Yeah, I have. I just, typically when a band or a comedian or whatever comes into town, the extent of the customization is, I love it here in San Jose, or whatever. And these guys were like, half the show was like Owen Nolan jokes. And I was like, holy shit.
I don't think Canada ever forgave us for having him for the rest of his career.
No, and you know what? Like, it's funny too, because it's not stand-up comedy. Like, it's a show. So they literally just subbed a whole bunch of shit out. I mean, it's pretty clever. Hold on, let me just open the calendar real quick.
Wait, it's like not live performance. It's just like...
No. It was a live performance, but they're not comedians. I mean, it was basically,
it's a scripted.
I'd like to differ.
Yeah, scripted. Well, I mean, they're on a 42 city tour, so the fact that they would go to the trouble to customize such a large percentage of it to, one of the cities is pretty hardcore.
What if they just sub a player's name into whatever jokes?
No, the jokes were very pretty specific. I mean, yes, and they're probably not doing it to the same extent, I'm guessing, elsewhere. I mean, it is the kind of their personality, but there was they were not like generic joke swap name here. They were like specific. It was, I wish I could recall one off the top of my head because they were pretty it was pretty funny the way they did it. Well, let me just open these games. But yeah, it was also crazy too because there was obviously a Sharks game going on, and so you had this interesting mix of people who were dressed for the Sharks game even though they weren't at the Sharks game.
Next best thing probably was a cheaper ticket.
Yeah, much cheaper, dude. Although oddly enough, they're playing in San Francisco tonight, and the tickets are $200 more.
Yeah, they know their audience.
Yeah.
You know what it is? They played the San Jose Theater, one of the San Jose theaters.
Oh, okay.
And then here, and then they're playing Bill Graham Civic.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's just a venue thing. Hold on, Facebook. Almost ready. Yeah, I did get the catch pieces of the game last night though.
Remember when lower bowl tickets in the tank were like $90?
Yeah, like $100 at most.
Yeah, like if you were in the first 10 rows was like 100, capped at like 120.
Yeah. I think it's bonkers. I think it's bonkers that they're raising ticket prices on the Barracuda. I get it that they just built a new arena. Don't get me wrong, but like, dude, the Barracuda are worse than the Sharks. Like, you can't be raising their tickets like $4 or $5 a seat. It's nuts. What are you doing? Just move it. You know what they should have done? They should have put them in Sacramento.
Yeah.
Because like Sacramento would have absolutely, like, it would have been a draw. Like, Sacramento would have absolutely embraced it. And here in San Jose, it's like you're second tier in a non-hockey market already, competing with all the other pro teams and everything else going on, and you suck.
Though like, if they're in Sacramento, I think Section 216 would have like had outright brawls way more often. Like the folk up there, man, they're different.
You say that as if that's a bad thing.
True.
Yeah. I just, they would have been close enough. I mean, granted, they would have paid more money. I think that's why the Sharks didn't do it, obviously. But it just, to me, is all right. You guys, okay.
Anytime I visit my my childhood buddy up in Jackson, I'm not struck by how much the people there seem like hockey folk. They are not.
Yeah, you know what is funny though is you get out to like not the Midwest, you get out to wilderness areas, and there's a lot of people who absolutely embrace hockey. But anyway, we're gonna keep putting teams in the desert. Why the fuck not? Number 180.
Yarp.
All right, let's do it to it. I got a surprise topic of conversation, which I think you guys will immediately have stuff to talk about. You ready?
Yeah, let me start the recording. All right, recording going.
Right. Hello and welcome to Circling the Cup, San Jose Sharks podcast, episode number 180. And hey, you got all three of us back. It's almost like we're a full team again. Hey, I feel like this parallels something that's slowly occurring in San Jose Sharks hockey world, and we're going to talk about that. I'm Alex. Here with me, as always, is the Honorable Ben. What's up, Ben?
All hail King Eric.
And his massive amount of minutes coming straight back from surgery and injury. Yes, correct. And live via satellite, although not clear on what time it is over there, our good friend Colin. What's up, Colin?
It's the time it's supposed to be, but dark o'clock works as well.
We got two topics of conversation for this podcast. We got a little bit of a mini one and then maybe a deeper one. I want to start with a mini one, though, because it just kind of popped up on the radar this morning. But Elliot Friedman is reporting that Hertl is not technically on the market, that he's been told that obviously the Sharks have been trying to re-sign him, but also that they're not necessarily shopping him right now either. I know we're mixed on this, guys, right? Huge part of us, as Ben keeps pointing out, gotta love Hertl. On the other side, he's 29. He's probably going to want long-term. And also, we don't want to lock up ourselves in more difficult contracts. But the fact that the Sharks aren't even right now supposedly considering moving him, at least, there's another week for them to really make that call, depending on how negotiations go. What do you guys make of that? I mean, do you think the Sharks are being coy or foolish, or do you think they genuinely think that they got a shot at locking him up and don't even want to take offers until the last possible minute?
I think, well, first, I don't think you have to shop Hertl around. I think you just need to say he's available and pick. I don't see how they're going to get this done in a way that doesn't have me raging in July. So, because let's face it, anything by 8 with Hertl is kind of questionable, and he's not going to go for 6 by 8. That's just off the table. He's looking for 7 plus 8, 5 plus, and we can't swallow that. We already have too many of these long-term post-30 contracts. Just it doesn't work.
You know what I keep seeing pop up? It doesn't bother me whatsoever, and it probably should, given his age, is when you look around other fan bases and you see the rumor conversations and even other journalists who are talking about him as, potential trade bait for their franchises. One of the things that keeps popping up is his knee injury history. And for some reason, normally I'm pretty sketch when you're talking about signing someone, long-term that's got an injury history. But for Hertl, to me, it seems like he only injures that when someone deliberately takes it out. It's not like he's, going around and limping.
Knock on wood.
No, I know,
Well,
but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so let's look at Karlsson, right? And I'm not trying to knock Karlsson or anything, right? But Karlsson, through his career on the Sharks so far, has had injuries that kind of flare up, and I don't really feel like Hertl's injuries. Again, yeah, sure, knock on wood, Ben. But I mean, to date, it hasn't been a flare up situation. It's been dude straight up takes out his kneecap, and then he's out. So I'm not as put off by Hertl's injury history as far as the signing goes. What were you going to say, Colin?
Well, first, I'm looking at the Vegas team and their cap space and what the team might need, and I'm just wondering what Hertl and Kaprizov would look like together.
Why?
Because that would be pretty awesome. But I'm also wondering, is there a reality, considering just how beautifully the Sharks have just taken the worst road this season? Is there a possibility where we sign him to some stupid contract and then trade him and retain salary?
No, but I would love to see the Sharks sign him.
This is not a Sendiguchi situation, damn it.
Yeah, it's not. I would love to see the Sharks sign him, but then move one of these other large contracts. And it's not, in my opinion, it's not Karlsson. I mean, we've already seen Karlsson sort of was going to be the second topic of conversation, but we can kind of tie these two together. The Sharks started the season looking surprisingly better than I think any of us were expecting them to be. And then they had a rash of COVID. They've had a rash of injuries, right? They've been very heavily snake bitten as far as the injury department goes, and some of that's their fault for the way that they're deploying players, for the amount of minutes they're giving. Again, Carlson's first game back, they gave him like 28 minutes right off the bat, and even he was joking about it. And he, obviously wasn't going to say no and could handle it there. But the Sharks do like to run players into the ground, as we know. But Carlson coming back, and all of a sudden the Sharks are winning again. And he's not the only person that's come back, right? Hill came back, had a great game yesterday. If the Sharks, it is possible that the Sharks are not necessarily, I'm not saying they're great, they're not necessarily as bad as they've been. It's been pretty situational, and I think the franchise is kind of betting on that. So now, if you believe that, and you take Hertl, you want to bring him in long term, but you've got a way to, again, offload another contract. Like, let's say you flip Burns you're able to flip Burns at the deadline or at the draft or the offseason, then all of a sudden that Hertl contract becomes a hell of a lot more palatable. Again, depending on what it is, but let's just assume it's going to be long term. It's still not, ideal to sign a 29-year-old that long, usually. But, much like with the Kane situation, where the second Kane was off the books, all of a sudden the idea of maybe giving Hertl money seemed okay. Whereas before it was like, there's no way you're not going to be able to get it done. And two, even if you could get it done, hold on a second. That's, now you're just putting us right back to where we're trying to get out of with these long contracts. But the second Kane's came off the books, it opened stuff up. So I think if they can continue to figure out creative ways of doing that, which, again, most of these players have no trade, no movement clauses, right? So that's a conversation that has to be had with those players. You can't just magically go, see ya, we're making room for Hertl, and that's kind of how it's going to work. But given the state of the franchise, and given the fact that, for a lot of these guys, if you're going to stick around on the Sharks, you're probably not going to be seeing a Stanley Cup in your career. That might make things a little bit more possible. And if the Sharks play is more, or has been more, injury affected than just being a really crappy roster, then we can maybe continue on this turn towards being okay again.
Okay, but so if this organization wants to be dangerous again next season, like not a cup contender, but maybe a dark horse who can knock out a big dog in the playoffs before, getting sniped in the second or third round.
I wouldn't call that dangerous, though. I would not define that as dangerous.
Dangerous to a team that actually has a shot, I mean. Because let's face it, if you were a 90s Sharks fan, that was our cake. Is taking out a team who's that's a cup team and we just took them out. Yes.
Yeah, and having that done to us too, though.
True.
It's like a two-way speed bump, right?
Sure, but we knew that team wasn't going to win a cup. It was it would be nice if, but not really. But so if they want to be dangerous again next season, you don't get rid of Couture. There's no way that's on their radar because he's their most consistent performer, even though he doesn't really make his line mates better.
He's not anymore.
Yeah, I would say not at all. Go on though.
Really?
We'll argue this, but go ahead.
I think he still gets pucks into the net. Again, he doesn't make his line better. He doesn't make the people around him better, but he makes an impact. Anyways.
He's expendable though. I think.
100%.
Here's the thing. I mean, that's the thing. He's not. Couture still plays really well. Couture still has quite a bit of value. But at the end of the day, is he elevating the play of the players of the team in the way that you kind of really need him to do? I would say not really.
That's never been his game though. He was an amazing winger on a line with a center who actually put his teammates up because he would get the puck, he would do something good with it.
Yeah.
And then it would go back to the center to, carry the play again. Yeah. Couture's the first to go if I had the choice.
He's not a playmaker. Well, so let me throw in my multiple cents here on the topics up to this point. So I think that first of all, you don't have to you don't have to say Tomas Hertl's on the market to get offers on Tomas Hertl. So
Yeah, right.
I think part of this is what Colin said, but I think additionally you don't want offers on Tomas Hertl right now if you're working on a contract with him. You want offers on Brent Burns. You want offers on apparently Jake Middleton. There's been a big PR push by state media to suggest that teams are calling after Middleton this week, and they probably are. So
I love Middleton's reaction. Did you see Middleton's reaction to that?
I did not.
He in a post game he was asked that. I think he was asked that by Shank, and his reaction was, "If you had told me before the season started that teams would be asking about me for trades, I would have called you a liar." Basically, is what he said.
Yeah.
So no way.
Yeah, I mean, same, right? Like this season, basically he started the season. It was questionable whether he was going to get any other shots at this team. At being on the Sharks, and now he's probably the most consistent defender, not named Carlson, on this team. So, what a world. So I think part of the reason the Sharks are putting this out there is to reassure Tomas Hertl that they are making a good faith effort to sign him, not move him, and to his agent. B, they'd like teams to call after other guys, not Hertl, right? They, as you say, if somebody calls and wants Brent Burns, they probably leave a vapor trail, signing that deal with the other team. And further, like, you've got time. If you want to make it known that Tomas Hertl is available, that it's not going to stop people that happens a day before the deadline, right? Like,
yeah, true.
Any offer on trade offer on Hertl right now is a distraction. The Sharks have limited resources to do cap crunching and negotiation and conversations. So get the fuck out of our face. We'll talk about Tomas in a week when we can't give him 8 years at $8 million.
Oh, hold on. No, I think what you mean is we hear you asking about Tomas, and we do hear you. Not right now. Can we offer you a Burns?
Yeah,
a Burns instead. Would that work? Yeah. I mean that's a great point.
So wait.
And then,
because I would love to get rid of Burns, but Ben, if you could include a possible, like, who the hell would take that and why would Burns wait for it? Yeah.
Burns?
Well, I mean, because I
think teams would absolutely take him.
People think Burns is still good, as opposed to being one of our worst defensemen, because he puts up points. I mean, look at the Ristolainen contract this week, the 5x5. That guy sucks, but he puts up points. So if you have a defenseman who sucks and puts up points, there's value.
I mean, it comes back around to the confusion in terms of how we tend to measure defensemen in this league. Unless you're looking really deep into advanced metrics and trusting those advanced metrics, because again, you see guys like Brent Burns and they go, well, I mean, again, if you go back, right, the way you used to measure defensemen was hits and plus minus. For the most part, and so now if you got a defenseman who looks like he's scoring goals and assists, that's something that you can put in your hand, I guess. You know what I mean? Like it's more solid than any other sort of interpretation that you're going to get. And a lot of teams, I think, are scared to try to figure out what a good defenseman actually is. So if you get a guy like him, and again, I think we talked about this before, but if you think about what teams are typically looking at the trade deadline, right? They're usually looking at a top defenseman. They're looking at a scoring winger, and they may or may not be looking at I would argue, usually more a backup goaltender than a starting, but it just kind of depends on the situation. So, okay, you have Brent Burns. Guess what? He technically fills two of those voids on the stat sheet, right? He's technically a defenseman, and he'll score and put up points for you on the offensive side. So I think for a lot of teams, a guy like Brent Burns, even with what's left on his contract, if you're close to getting over the hump, that might be a bit of a no-brainer, and even more so if you're willing to play around with the experiment that we did years ago, where you go, hey, like, we want you as a defense, but maybe we just need you to play power forward for a bit, or whatever it is. I mean, he's got value in a way that guys like Vlasic don't, and I think that's why I keep bringing up his name.
And what's funny is Vlasic has been thoroughly mediocre this year, not bad. So he's looked bad at times, but if you look at his underlying numbers, he's actually not been terrible. So it's just hilarious that nobody knows how to actually evaluate defensemen anywhere except Florida and Tampa Bay and
I mean, it is tricky though, like you see people, running towards possession, but you kind of don't want your defense to have possession for super long. You know what I mean? Like you want them to get their stick in, block the puck, and get it up to the forwards.
Yes, right. You want, and that can be any combination of sort of features of a defenseman, right? Any defenseman could, size, shape, speed, what have you, could in theory fit that mold, right? It's just people don't really. They fixate on the wrong things. Briefly, also on the Couture comment. So I think the Sharks would probably be better off in the short term if they do trade better off in the long term if they do trade Tomas Hertl. But I have the same concern of moving Couture as I do with Hertl, which is this team is very now light on center depth. I'm less concerned about Couture because he's not a playmaker.
Right.
Hertl can be. Hertl is pretty good at a little bit better at distributing than Couture is anyway. And but to get to the point of he started the year pretty well, and then he's fallen sort of off a cliff, unlike Meyer and Hertl, right? So who knows why that is? Could be a combination of age, injury, whatever. So if a team came calling for Couture, I would be much more likely to pull the trigger than I would with Hertl. That's I want to circle back on that. Anyway,
I think you're right, and I think the other thing too is for me, if I'm trading Couture, I need to be getting more than just a draft pick back. You know what I mean?
Oh, like Hertl, I don't. Though.
No, I agree, but there's a different message. I think I'm just going to take a fan perspective here. There's a different message to me if the Sharks trade Hertl than if they trade Couture. For me, if they're trading Hertl, I understand where they're trying to go a little bit more, I think, as far as in the new core, so to speak. And again, he's not young, right? So we've had this conversation about what he would probably represent for those years in the contract. Couture, for me, if you trade Hertl and you keep Couture, to me, you're saying you're not competing. You're not where I thought you were trying to be in terms of where in the rebuild you are. And so, I would much prefer to have a player in a pick, obviously, like a player that can make an impact or a potential impact soon in a Hertl trade. However, if the Sharks were to just flip Hertl for picks, given that he's a UFA anyway, I don't think I would be as bothered than if we signed Hertl and just flipped Couture for picks. Maybe that's illogical. It's just a weird feeling that I have there. I feel like if you're keeping Hertl, you're still trying to compete. I feel like if you lose Hertl, I don't really know how you're trying to compete at that point.
Question.
Yeah.
Would either of you take a Couture trade in division?
Why not?
Well, normally division trades are seen as terrible, but
here's the thing though, right? The Sharks are not particularly competitive in the division right now, anyway. And also, if you're trading Couture, you're moving on. You're absolutely moving on. So it wouldn't bother me to have him be on another team. Plus, he's getting older. It's not like
exactly. Handcuff the Kings, yes, please.
That's exactly who I was thinking of.
Send him to play with his good friend Drew Doughty.
Yeah. Well, well, let's talk about some of these, some of what we saw this week, just in terms of Sharks play, because Sharks play seem to turn a little bit of a corner here against at least the Kings really, but Karlsson came back, right, and we kind of go from struggling to score goals to we can score some goals. Not everything is super comfortable in these games. For example, the goaltending, at least with Sachenko, a little nerve-wracking at points. But how much We talked about how much of an impact Carlson has when he is in the lineup versus when he isn't in the lineup, despite, some fans, how they want to read it or their ire. He comes back in, and all of a sudden, it looks like the Sharks are playing somewhat competent defense, and they're able to get the puck up more, and they're able to start to get goals. Now, they're still getting goals from the same handful of players. I think that's probably just going to be the tail of the rest of the season. But how much do you guys think injuries have impacted what this team is? And not in the obvious sense of, well, yes, if guys are injured, they're going to be worse. Yeah. Understood. But
Well,
now that we're starting to get guys back, what are your feelings on that? Go ahead, Colin.
I think, well, one, Carlson takes minutes, which lets other people get some rest, and when you're rested, you'll play better. You'll play closer to your capabilities. Also, Carlson, as much as I don't like his contract, he is a good player, and he's a smart player. He positionally, as long as he's not getting caught on a pinch, he's good. He knows where to be, and he still has the legs to get there. And as long as his defensive partner knows that their job is to cover for Carlson, he doesn't give up too many bad things. So yeah, I feel like when injuries hit this team, the thing that goes to shit is everyone, all the top 4 people in the team end up playing the whole game because the coaching staff has no idea what to do. And so everyone is tired and just ragged. And so when you bring people back and you get to distribute the minutes a bit more even, people are playing better because they're more rested. So I guess I'm going back to our favorite bell of, bad coaching.
I think history is going to look back, Sharks history is going to look back on the Erik Karlsson tenure. And the story that it's going to tell is one of at least at the time, a good team initially, and a good player who just, kind of like in a relationship where the timing is just off. Because the thing with Erik Karlsson is Erik Karlsson he's an impact player. He can do amazing things. The Sharks don't have the talent around him to make use of all that. And they also don't have the coaching to not have, him and the other players just go all into individual hero mode, which again, they've been a little bit better about that this season than the last couple of seasons. But it's not that Karlsson is bad. I think a lot of fans will look at it and they're frustrated because, well, we're not getting enough or the contract handcuffed us. The fact of the matter is, if the timing were a little bit different, if this contract had happened a couple of years earlier, I think it would have been a very different story for his experience and our experience with him as well. But him coming back, again, this defense core, I mean, you heard about players playing with broken feet, right? They have been snake bitten by the injury bug. And again, I'm not saying it's because they're not doing something wrong, maybe in training, or they're just playing the rotation of minutes. I'm not saying those aren't factors because I'm sure they are. But when they do seem to have people on the ice, they seem to be competent. And the second they don't, and they've got to scramble and figure out how to adjust whatever strategy they seem to think they're going with, I think that's where they really start to fall apart in my mind. And again, that's a coaching thing. But Ben, you haven't said anything. What's your thoughts? That means that you're observing silently, getting ready to strike.
I'm judging you. I think Colin is on to one part of it. Particularly is that the Sharks are terrible at distributing minutes, and that gets worse every time you subtract a piece that Boughner trusts. And Boughner only trusts guys who are 27 plus and are Canadian or American, so that's problematic. And further, I think we said this when Karlsson went down and the team immediately went into a funk, that we'd already acknowledged that Karlsson was having a great year and largely driving play. Karlsson coming back, what a shock, seems to be driving play, right? I don't think he was as big a deal in the 5-0 win against the Kings as much as he was in keeping the Sharks in the game in, the overtime victory.
To be fair, the Kings kept us in that game.
Yeah. Personally, I feel like he had a much better game in the 4-3 win. It felt like first game back, he had a lot of energy. Second game, maybe he had a little less because, hey, he came
Well,
back and played
could it be-
28 minutes.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say, could
Yeah,
it be because they rode him a little too long?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. So that's going to be an ongoing thing, right? To see how much this team continues to drive off that off Carlson's play, and whether they kill him too. That probably gets worse, by the way, with the Brent Burns trade too. So
Oh, of course, yeah.
Buffner being who he is, he's gonna fucking choose a defenseman, and that guy's gonna play 30 minutes. And hey, maybe think about not playing guys who suck like Magna, and you wouldn't have to do that.
Okay, I think I was going to ask you a question, Ben, but I think you just answered it.
Okay.
Would you have kept Merkley up, and who would you have?
Oh,
gotten rid of?
absolutely. Would I have
Yeah,
kept
I don't
him?
know. I don't know. I don't see, and that's the frustrating thing, right? Is I don't know why the Sharks are making some of the moves between the AHL and the NHL roster. That's what really baffles me. Is like, even if it's a trust thing, will you trust these guys that aren't doing anything?
Yeah.
Why?
No, but
Like-
because Buffner has no idea what good defensive play looks like.
Hey, real quick,
Yeah.
because you keep bringing it up, and I think someone's going to just think you're mispronouncing his name. You've given him a new nickname, I'm assuming, for the rest of his tenure in the Sharks, correct, Ben?
You want to explain, Colin?
So for the first time ever, my wife saw how Bogner's name is spelled, and she just looked at it in confusion for a while. She's like, "Wait, how do you say this name? Pronounce his name for me." And I say Bogner. She's like, "That doesn't make any sense. Phonetically, that's just not how the language works. It's Buffner. That's the name. It's Buffner." I'm like, I have to tell Ben this.
So if anyone thinks we don't know what we're talking about because we can't get the coach's name right, that is by intent. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well,
Ben.
I mean, you'd have to be a first-time listener to not
Yeah.
grok that I'm a complete asshole. Anyway, where were we?
Carlson.
Merkley.
Merkley.
Yeah.
Carlson.
So I mean, I'm okay. Milosh, fine, right? Like, I think Milosh is a better player than Magna, but there's just no excuse to have Magna in and Merkley out. Merkley, again, he's played well enough, and he needs to be playing at the NHL level. You dumb motherfuckers.
Yeah,
If you leave him at the AHL, it's a waste of time because he's going to take that opportunity to be bored and fuck off and do stuff he shouldn't do. Anyway.
Yeah, and a couple of things with that too. It would be one thing if the NHL roster had a whole bunch of competent defensemen playing on it, in which case you could make the argument that we need something more known and stable. We don't really have that right now. So in that sense, it doesn't make sense not to pull them up. Then when you look at the AHL team, it sucks right now. And to be fair, quite a bit of that is probably because the players are getting yanked, left and right, going up and down, and it's not a full roster. But either way, it doesn't make a difference. At the end of the day, you need guys. There's basically three types of AHL players, as far as I'm concerned. There are the guys that are the future of your franchise, right? These are the prospects that you really think have a shot at being an impact player on your NHL team at some point in time. That's one. Okay, two are the fringes. Guys who are pretty much AHL players, but you drafted them, and if one of them plays well enough to earn a spot up or surprise you, great. But most of those players aren't going to turn out. Then you have the third, which is just the straight up AHL seat filler. And those are the guys you see signed, and occasionally, Sharks fans will be like, "Who's that guy? Is he the next big thing?" And you go, "No, he's like 28, man. They're just filling out a roster spot." Those are kind of the three players that you have. With where the AHL team is right now, any player that you are looking at as a high percentage, a player with a high percentage chance of being a critical part of your roster moving forward, at this point, there's no excuse for that guy not being up and getting the experience. Like, literally no experience, especially with how bad the AHL team. If the AHL team, let's say the Sharks were a dumpster fire, right? And the AHL team was lights out, that might be a different conversation, because they might be getting a better experience for development in that situation, even though the AHL is not as strong a league. But that's not the case. Both the Sharks and the Barracuda are pretty much the same place. So to not be giving Merkley the experience now is an absolute waste of his time. Absolute waste of a year of his life, of a year of his life as a Shark. It makes no sense to me whatsoever.
And the other thing that bugs me is they keep saying how things aren't so bad. You know, the organization is, just a few steps away, which, if I were to look at the whole organization, look at the AHL team, look at the NHL team, I'd have to assume they're looking at the AHL team, they're looking at their kids and going, okay, there is the depth and the talent that we need there. We just need to let it mature a little bit. And that means, okay, next season, all these kids are coming up to play for a coach that doesn't play kids. So
you mean just like this year?
I think
exactly.
I think the problem with this organization right now is it's half right on almost everything, right? When you look at the ticket sales, they go, well, COVID. Yeah, COVID has impacted ticket sales. Is that the only thing? No. When you look at some of the like the way they sort of talk about this franchise as far as like, well, everyone's just, it's tough when everyone's injured. Are they right? Yeah, it is tough when everyone's just injured. Does that mean that the team is going to be amazing when they're not injured? Also, no. So there's this it's not like I think the team is full on delusional, because I think some of the bets that they're hedging and some of the things that they're reading, I think are correct, just not to the extent that I think they're leaning into them. Again, if you go back to just the comments about, ticket sales and stuff like that, if the thinking from the organization is, oh, well, when COVID restrictions, lift and we start next season, everything's going to magically be fine, I think that's crazy, because it's not just that. And I think the same thing goes with the injuries. Do I think the injuries have hampered the season? Absolutely. Yep. The team was pretty good in the beginning. Do I think that means that this is magically a good team if everyone's back and healthy? No, I don't. And do I think that they're where they need to be if everyone's back and healthy? Also, no.
What do you mean by good?
Maybe because, for me,
because this team could have stumbled into the playoffs if it had been able to maintain health.
Yeah, but I don't believe it would have had an impact in the playoffs. Right. And I think that's where the Sharks, again, like the Sharks, I think they view it that way, Ben, right? Like, listen, this team was good enough to qualify for maybe a wild card spot or maybe a little bit higher if they were healthy. But I also think the organization that immediately would have been like, and run for a cup. And I would have been like, or go far. And I would have said, maybe in like another year or two, assuming we continue to develop. Sure. But not right now.
Just
it just seems like they buy in a bit more on everything than I am.
Well, I mean, the NHL playoffs can be pretty crazy, and a hot goalie and a great defenseman has been known to drag a team at least to the conference finals, which
do you think
would have been worst case scenario for us, to be perfectly honest, right? But that most fans are like, what? That's best case scenario. No, not for what the Sharks need to be doing. Do I think it could have happened? Yeah. Reimer plus Karlsson? Sure. Yes. Totally.
I don't think we would have gotten out of the first round. I really don't.
I'm saying could have.
Likely
to?
Have.
Sure. No.
Right. Yeah, especially in the West.
I mean, the thing is, Pacific is pretty bad.
Yeah. But I think that's my point is that this org is just, they're a little more all in on some of these.
For sure.
Some of the logic. But again, they're not wrong. And I think that's the challenge that they've kind of put themselves in, where, again, this is why I think they need fresh eyes.
Yeah.
Because they're looking at it from it's not that I think that they're just being overly optimistic, that they are, but I think it's more to do with the fact that they're just too close. And it's too hard for them to see sort of anything else. And I think that's what's kind of putting us in a bad position. It continues to put us in a bad position. And that's why they make some of the decisions that they make, which don't really seem to make a whole lot of sense if you take a step back and really look at it objectively.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Colin?
Well, I was just going to say, do you know what team makes me really sad to look at? Is Detroit. Because they're going to be pressing for a cup before we are.
I mean, listen, it just sucks to know that we had a window and the team couldn't get over the hump for various reasons, and it's a bummer. And so we had all that. I think it's very hard for a lot of fans to reconcile with that. That we were good for a long time, we didn't get anything out of it, and now we have to be bad. And that's the cycle. Like typically, you hope to win, and then you hit that cycle, versus just being good for a long period of time and not hitting that cycle. But then again, the NHL, that can be how it works. We got a couple of games that I want to get us into real quick. So we basically had, I believe, was it 3 games this week? Right? Am I crazy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
We had the
But only
the
two
first
of them
game.
count, Alex, because 2 of them had Carlson back, and the Sharks
That's
won.
fair. I'm just
get
gonna
off.
so I know your opinion, so I'm just gonna go ahead and fly right through that Anaheim one. The Sharks would lose to the Anaheim Mighty Ducks by a score of 3-2. They did get goals from Couture and Vlasic. Hey, Vlasic scored. I remember my kid was all excited about that. He said, "Pickles."
I mean, come on, that goal, like, only Vlasic can shoot to the boards and score a goal. And it
Well,
was
that's
his
because-
first in the year, I
I
think.
know.
He can't hit the net, so
Yeah.
it's the perfect Vlasic goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vlasic, anyone can shoot at the net and score a goal. You must shoot away from the net.
Yeah. Well, maybe he's like
Oh my
Mr.
God.
Maybe he's like Mr. Magoo, and he just doesn't have the eyesight, and so he thinks he's shooting on net. But then you take off the glasses and you have him shoot where he thinks he should be shooting, and then it goes the other way.
He's all cross-eyed.
sure.
He sees 3 nets. He fired at the
Yeah.
left one.
Yeah. Now that we figured that out, though, we just tell him to do that every single time, and we're good, right? Sharks would then go on and play the Kings. They're playing the Kings 3 times in 4 games, really, in this stretch. The Sharks would end up winning this in overtime, and I'll get to that overtime goal in a second. But this game, not the best start. Carlson did come back, which was quite nice. The Sharks were smart enough to start Sawchenko over Stalock, I felt this time. Goal from Brent Burns in the first. Then I'll tell you what, man. I got not that I think Sawchenko is the future. I got real freaked out about his glove hand on the next 2 goals, which happened 8 seconds apart from each other. One was a shot that wasn't on net that he tried to catch and just couldn't get his hands all the way on it and batted it down, and it was a bad situation. And the second one was another one that also kind of hit his glove, although this one was at least on net. So not very encouraging. The Sharks would battle back, though. The Kings would score again in the second, making it 3-1. That's when I had it on in the background. I stopped focusing on the game. But I did see Nick Bonino score, and then Barabanov, who it seems like everyone would love to keep, and also Barbie's a great nickname for him. But then it was the overtime heroics of our good Tomas Hertl, and not just any heroics, folks. A lot has been made about this goal. Probably shouldn't be, but Hertl loves to attempt the wraparound. If there's one thing that I will always remember about Hertl, other than fun must be always, and maybe his love of Minions characters, it will be the constant wraparound attempt. And this time he completed it. And I'll tell you what, listener AJ Chichu sent a note over to me and said, "Next I want a Michigan." That's next on his checklist, which I think is an overly lofty goal for a guy that took like 100 attempts at a wraparound before he really got it. But that was a beautiful, beautiful goal. What do you guys think about this game?
I want to point out, go back and watch his goal again, and the only reason he was able to do the wraparound is because Quick flopped.
Yeah.
Quick flopped
Yep.
trying to draw a penalty, an interference penalty. And he completely fucked it up. The refs were like, "Nope." So
I
go back.
didn't notice the flop, but I did notice Quick just going on a staylock to the boards.
Yeah, so he was getting. I don't remember who was in the crease, but he did get bumped as he was moving to the left, and then he just fucking flailed, and the refs, as they often do, swallowed the whistle, and good on them, because fuck the Kings and fuck Quick.
You know who made me excited at this game? I know Carlson and Hertl are going to get the attention. I'm excited to see Dahlin, who is another player who probably would be having an even more stellar of a first season if it weren't for the constant injuries, and I think he said he had whiplash and COVID and all of that. And he was a -2 coming out of here. You could say well, Meyer was a -3, whatever. Who cares about plus minus sometimes? But Dahlin, refreshing.
Yeah.
To have that guy playing.
Well, I think Dolan also suffers from the team not having a system because he strikes me as like somebody who, if he knows where he's supposed to be, if he knows like sort of how the play is trying to shape up, he will find the right space to be in. Like he seems really smart in context.
Yeah.
So like I think he'd be having a better season if he just had a more consistent like game to game experience.
I would argue that that's what I like about Dolan right now is the fact that the Sharks don't have that, and he's able to do what he does is a really good sign that if they do figure out a more stable, logical system for this roster with better coaching, that he'll thrive. Because the fact that he's doing pretty well without that stability, I mean, that's at the end of the day, you kind of want that, especially from a younger player. You want to you don't want to test them that way necessarily, but you want a guy who, if the shit hits the fan, can still produce and still make an impact.
Yeah.
Well, early in the season, I was complimenting him on him being able to read Couture and play off of Couture in a way that made Couture look good. Like he knew, he's like, okay, Couture's going to get the puck and try to drive the net. I'm going to try to be off to the opposite side just in case.
Yeah.
And like he reads his line mates and he reacts to them. And that's a really good player.
I mean, to be fair, Couture has a way he plays, right? So it's easy to read Couture's play. By contrast, you bring that up that there was that chemistry between those two. There's a fun moment in the 5-0 game where Scott Reedy was caught by surprise by a puck that appeared on his stick from Karlsson, and that's the challenge that these guys really have to adjust to. Is that a supreme passer is going to shoot a puck through 14 people to you. At some point, you need to be ready.
Yeah,
for
you
it.
got to be. Yeah, heads up.
I think that's also the Sawchenko problem because, like, the puck he tried to glove out of the air, you don't touch that puck in the NHL. You wait for somebody to do something with it. You wait for like your 7-foot tall Burns defender to try to bat it down. Like, you do not try to play that as a goalie unless you are the tallest goalie in the league. And even then, you don't leave your crease for it. Like, that was just he hasn't experienced the NHL enough to know to leave that alone. Whereas the glove that he just missed, he just got burned. That was the missay that made me go, maybe not the league for you.
I do love this image you just put in my head of Karlsson that echoes, Jumbo, where you could just be skating and all of a sudden a puck would magically teleport onto your stick and you'd be like, where the hell did that come from? I just see some of these younger skaters skating around going, what? I was trying to sneak away and not be noticed over here. How did the puck get over here? I think it's a funny way to look at it.
Yeah,
isn't totally. That's Ben's point though? These people need to be playing up. They need to be playing with the speed and the talent that is in the league. Like, could you imagine having Merkley actually get fed from Karlsson? Like, Karlsson gets the puck in the power play, maybe goes down to the circle to draw the defense over, then fires it over to Merkley. Like, that's a bang bang play right there. But
I mean, you gotta be engaged. Well, the Sharks will continue to play the Kings because why the hell not? We stacked all the division games towards the latter half of the season with great job scheduling people. By the way, I do find it hilarious that we go Kings, Panthers, Kings. You just go Kings. Let's do a little baseball thing.
Well, the Panthers had to come in and play the Kings too, so it's fine.
I know. But why break it? Why break it up? You get a little sick of them and then come right back around next? No, come on. Sharks won this game 5-0. I must confess I have not caught up to this game because I was at Letterkenny Live, also going on at the same time in San Jose, and they made a lot of deep cut Owen Nolan and San Jose jokes, which I thought were great. So I haven't been able to watch this. I'm going to leave this one up to you guys a little bit more, but this was a 5-0 game. Hill was back in his first game in a while. The Sharks got goals in the first from Timo Meier, Matt Nieto. Oh yeah, Matt Nieto. He's on the team. Long Beach native. They got a goal from Jonathan Dahlen. And then in the second, Hurdle scores. And then in the third, because he's in the middle of his contract negotiation, so of course, Hurdle scores again. As to guys that had the ability to see this, anything pop out to you?
You want to go
Ben's
first?
Gonna have to. You've got to carry this one. Ben,
Oh, okay.
I had to absorb this game through highlights and stats.
You guys are lucky that I came home and decided to stay up and keep my bunny company because I did actually. So we had board game night last night. I was out until 10. I came home and I watched the game. So, it's a 5-0 game. The scoreboard, I don't think, tells the whole tale. And as I mentioned, I don't think Carlson was as visible and as key in this one as he was in the prior game. It's one of those games where the Sharks got up early and then the Kings really basically skated downhill the rest of the game. No pun intended. In that sense, Adin Hill fucking played a great game, an incredible game. Got lucky at times as well. There was a wide open net on one play that just skipped past. It was one of the Kings' young defenders, I think, who didn't get it, corralled and pushed in. Obviously, Timo and Hurdle are extremely happy to have Carlson back because the puck actually gets to them, so they can create space. Reedy continued. Both Kings games, Reedy drew a bunch of penalties, so like 3 in the first and 1 in this one, and that's a huge value from a fourth liner. Let's see what else. Magnus sucks, though he did play a 2-on-1 perfectly, which credit where it's due. No one else on the team seems to be able to do that. Yeah, that's it. That's pretty much all I got.
You bring up the 2-on-1. Wait, you bring up the 2-on-1, and I loved how in the first Kings game this season, Hetty was just like, "I'm so happy to see Burns not flop on that 2-on-1."
Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
they pushed it through his skates, but at least he kept on top of them.
Yeah, no, I mean Magna had perfect.
I was dying.
Magna had perfect form. He went down to one knee, put his stick out, blocked the pass, and blocked an easy shot with the move. No starfish, no nothing. It was a thing of beauty. So he can. If Bufner would like to put him on the coaching staff, that seems to me like the right place for him to be now.
I'm just encouraged by Hill coming back in and having a good game. Sawchenko is really to me. He's not an NHL goaltender, and then his backup was Stalock. Again, not right now an NHL goaltender. Yeah. To have an NHL goaltender come in, and also to have it be Hill specifically. I mean, he's had a difficult time coming back from his injury. There's also, I think from an organizational standpoint, at least a fan standpoint, there's a lot of pressure on Hill to an extent, more than I think Reimer, because, I don't necessarily think that anyone, Reimer, when Hill was signed to be the hopeful look at a longer term goaltending solution. Yep. Reimer was really signed to help challenge him and get him to that point and, make sure that the Sharks stayed afloat within a rotation, which, the Sharks, they're not really disciplined enough to do that in the first place. So to have Hill come back and to have Hill have a good game, I think is great because, he still has an opportunity here. We still need him to do well, regardless of whether he's the long-term solution for the Sharks goaltending situation. And I'm happy that he was able to come back in and immediately make an impact because, nothing personal against Sawchenko. I don't think he's ready to be an NHL caliber goaltender. And so I think, as the Sharks kind of go down the stretch, I know right now it was better to get the draft picks and blah, 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 blah. But I still like to see the Sharks play well, and they can't play well if they've got unreliable goaltending, especially if they have unreliable defense. Like you're not going to get great games that way. So I appreciate him coming back. Hey guys, 3 stars of this week. Ben, why don't you go first?
All right, my 3rd star is Scott Reedy because he's finally getting the chance he has deserved for a while, and so far Bufner has not sent him back down for being too good. My 2nd star is going to go to John Leonard because he had an amazing little run this week in the CUDA and should be up and playing on that 4th line instead of somebody like Gadjevich. And my 1st star is obviously Erik Karlsson, the guy who drives the bus. Meep, meep.
I'm gonna go next, Colin. I'm gonna give you not 3rd star. You get to go 3rd in order. Sorry, bud. I do love you, but you haven't earned it this week. I am going to give my 3rd star to Barabanov, who I think he was a good pickup by the Sharks, and he's one of those guys where you can't re-sign everyone. Wouldn't mind having him on the team moving forward. I'm going to give my 2nd star to Erik Karlsson for pretty much the same reason, Ben, that you gave him your first star. The only reason I'm not giving him the first star is because I just feel like I can't not continue to give Tomas Hertl first stars. I mean, he really is, in my opinion, and yes, there's Timo Meier right there too, but Hertl, I think, really is the best player at the moment on this team consistently. And he's got, lots of goals this week, including his unicorn, the wraparound. So that's my first star. Colin, you go.
I like Reedy as a third pick, so I'm also going to give him a third star.
Copycat.
Hey, it's my right. I'm going to give Meier my second star because the thing that's really stuck out to me in like this last week especially, but ever since the All-Star break, is Meier's playing really smart. Like, and it's not just he's making smart plays or like doing quick touches. Like when he sees a opponent player who just needs his clock clean, like he realizes he needs to throw a hit to like, set the tone. He doesn't just go and throw a hit and take a penalty. He waits and he looks for the right opportunity, and he seems to like understand what the rest will call and what they won't. Like he's making that transition to a player who understands how he has to play to succeed in the NHL. And I really like watching that. Like, I wasn't super hyped on Timo, like when he first came on. I thought there were better draft opportunities, and he's really started to grow on me in these last few months.
Hard 180 from last season. Hard 180.
Yeah. And then first star goes to Hertl. Like,
You're just trying to keep him on the roster. I understand.
No,
that's why I keep giving him
the problem. I kind of don't like. I was kind of joking because I've just been like looking at the various teams, looking at the standings. Like, okay, who would want a center like Hertl and has like the cap space, has like the right pieces where he would really make a big impact. And Minnesota kind of makes sense, and we have like trade history with them, so like. Hertl and Kaprizov, that would be something to see. Like I think if Hertl went to Minnesota, I am rooting for Minnesota in these playoffs.
No way, and I'll tell you why. How could you root for Minnesota over Florida? Yeah, there's no way.
I'm allowed to root for both until they face each other.
I like that we had the same reaction there.
You are the worst.
Hey, the Sharks have some games coming up this week. Speaking of Florida, they play them on Tuesday. Then they're playing the Kings again on Thursday as the first part of a back-to-back, in which the second game on Friday, they are playing the Colorado Avalanche. They also, on that Sunday, play the Arizona Coyotes. I'm only noting it because it's going to be happening before or after we do the podcast. We're not going to count it on the week, even though, it's the same day. Right now, the Sharks are sitting 7th in the Pacific. They have 59 points. Just above them is Anaheim with 64 and Vancouver with 65. And below them, feeling like they probably didn't do this whole expansion draft right, is the Seattle Kraken.
By the way, they did not do this.
They didn't.
Absolutely not. What was really interesting was they had a blueprint. Don't get me wrong. I don't think, I think there were a lot of reasons why Vegas is, as successful as they are now and so quickly. A lot of things sort of hit at the right time. But Seattle just kind of looked at that blueprint and went, and now they're looking like, that's how I read that team.
I mean, they have Yanni Gourde, so I'm going to hate them no matter what.
We could have had him. We did have him.
At least they got cool merchandise. That's what I'm going to say. Hey, you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple iTunes and Apple's podcast app. You can also check us out on Spotify. Hey, Android people, probably that second option is good for you. Hey, leave a review. Love them 5 stars. Go ahead and do it. You can also check us, Ben, out on Twitter at Circling the Cup. You can check us out on the web at circlingthecup.com. You can check out our Facebook where we do take questions. It's kind of all we do at that point on Facebook. At facebook.com/circlingthecup. I think I covered everything there. That concludes yet another week of Sharks hockey. Here's looking forward to another week of Sharks hockey. And also worth pointing out that as we start to get into this, as we start to get into this next week, those of you who like watching trade deadlines, this is the time of year this is the week where it gets really fun.
Yeah.
Or scary depending on what you what you care about.
I'm
But
looking at the Drew trade. I can't wait to see what the market's set at with that.
just wait to hear that every single that Hurdle is going to every single team, and by every single team, I mean Boston, Toronto, Montreal, who will all be writing about how he clearly wants to play there and has his entire career, even though he's not from any of those locations. I'm just throwing it out there. That is it, guys. Say bye-bye.
Start Sawchenko for the tank.
Stop gaining standing points.
Bye-bye.
All right, I have to bail quick here because my battery's almost out.
Do it. Me too. All right.
I want them to start Sawchenko